So in this video we'll talk about proofs, like a simple approach. So how do you prove something? You use certain statements, some certain observations, certain concepts and ideas to prove something to be true. So for example, let's say if I know perpendicular lines. Now, what do you know about perpendicular lines? They meet at 90 degrees. Now, if I say two lines meet at 90 degrees, could they be perpendicular? Is that true or is it false? So, there are some relationships which might be true in one way but false or do not work in the other order. But with perpendicular lines, if I said two lines meet at 90 degrees, they are perpendicular. So that is true. So two lines meet at 90, or if they're perpendicular, they form 90 degrees. So this converse of the proof exists, right? Okay, let's try another one. Let's say we had A is equal to B and then B is equal to C. Can we say A is equal to C, right? That's called the transitive property, right? What if we have A is equal to B and B is equal to A? We call that the reflexive property. Then we have a few other pieces of information. Any straight line has a 180-degree angle, right? Angles add up to angles on a straight line add to 180. This also happens to be the supplementary angles. Then with complementary angles, if we have two lines like this and maybe a third line in the middle. So these two angles, theta and beta, that's Greek by the way, they add up to 90 in this case, right? Because if they're meeting at perpendicular, so this angle is 90. So this is the complementary angles. What else do we know? How else do we find angles? We use algebra, right? Where we write an equation. And then we have equality, where we say something's equal to another thing. So one side of the equation, the left-hand side, is equal to the right-hand side. So we've got that. Then we learnt about congruence, where we know two angles can be exactly equal. So that's based on congruence. So let's try in our exam. So now we have this question from C8, proofs involving angles. So now we have a diagram, complete the proof for line. So let me just write what is happening. So this symbol on the top is line. This symbol is perpendicular. So there we know something about perpendicular, that they meet at 90 degrees, right? Okay, let's read the question and then we'll see what's the statement and what's the reason, which is given over here. So we've got W, Z, Y and X, Z, Y, V. And we've been given these two angles right here and here, right? So angle WZX, which is this angle, the yellow angle, is equal to V, congruent to VZW, which is given over here. Okay, so that's given to you. Now we know M, the measure. This M is representing measure. This M. Measure means what's the measurement or the value of angle VZW, which is right here, plus WZX is 180. Now that's the angles forming a linear pair sum to 180 degrees. Then we did this part. VZW, which is this angle, plus VZW, right, is 180. So instead of WZX, we called it VZW. So we repeated it twice. So that, how did we get that? By substitution. Okay, because we know this thing, that they are congruent to each other. Okay, so we can, instead of this part, we can substitute this VZW. So that's how we get this third statement. Now, we got M measure of VZW to be 90 degrees. Now, how do you think we found that? We've got an equation. How can we solve for M, the measure of VZW? We have two of them, right? And then in the next step, we get to 90. So what have we used here to solve this? We've got a list that we can choose from, right? This is our list. So what do we think we used? What did we use? We used algebra, right? We solved the equation, and that's how we found it. If I hit submit, I get the points. Okay, let's check another one. So you've got to read what is given to you and what we can utilize. Okay, so TQ is perpendicular to UV, so that's given, right? And QR is perpendicular to RS, even that's given. And then complete the proof of QRS to be congruent to TUV. So if we draw this, TU and UV, right? They're saying this is perpendicular. And then QR and RS. Even that's perpendicular. So we have some information, right? So now the question is, what can we say about QRS and TUV? Let's put a U over here. So we want to prove that they are exactly equal. So how did we get TUV to be 90 degrees? Now we know the definition of perpendicular lines is that the angles meet at 90. So we used the same idea to define these two, right? And then because there's 90, we equated these two, right? And we said transitive property of equality. So how can we prove the last part, that these two angles are congruent? What should we choose from our drop down menu? The definition of congruence, and there we get that, right? So you can try different approaches and try to get these answers as needed. So there's a drop down menu, right? and you can choose those to solve ahead. Good luck.